Okay, now we're on the book. This is chapter 2 of Esther. Chapter 2, verse we're gonna start at verse 5. Esther chapter 2, verse 5. Now we're doing just a recap of verse 1, chapter 1 of Esther. We had the king. He had been king. He was celebrating his third year of being a king. Um, he had a queen he wanted to show off, so he sent his wise men to go and tell his wife to come here. But instead of, because he wanted to show her off, but instead of her coming so he could show her off, she showed out in front of the king's wise men, in front of the people that she was having a feast for, because the king's wife was having a feast for the women, for all the women. She had a separate feast for the women, and her feast was the third feast. The king had two feasts, and she had one for just the women of the king, the women of the palace. So the king sent his wise men to her to command her to come in so he could show her off. But she denied and didn't come. She said no. Of course, she showed out. And so the king got rid of her because she was sowing discord in the palace, that she disobeyed the king. She was a wicked servant, really. She was a wicked wife. You know, she was wicked. Virgin daughter of Babylon. She was a witch, basically. She was sowing discord with everybody, dishonoring everybody, basically dealing in witchcraft. Yeah, she was a witch. Now, chapter 2, verse 5. Here we go. This is good. Now, in the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai. Okay, yeah. In the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, a Benjamite. So also in the palace, there was a man named Mordecai, a Jew. He also was a Benjamite, the tribe of Benjamin. That's what I am. Benjamin, if you don't know, that's the youngest tribe out of all 12 tribes. That is the youngest tribe. You know, Benjamin, the wolf, not the wolf in sheep clothing, for you carnal-minded creatures. But the wolf who don't play. You know, we run in a pack. You know, our shepherd. We the youngest tribe. So, you know, we got to set the record straight for you witches and warlocks and soothsayers and necromancers and tarot card readers and palm readers and, you know, psychics and wizards and, you know, all of that foolishness. Don't nobody want to speak up. So the tribe of Benjamin, son of God's right hand, we shall do it in Jesus' name. Okay. So, yeah. Verse 6, who had carried away. Okay. There was a certain man named Mordecai who was a Jew, who was in the palace. He also was a Benjamite, the tribe of the Benjamins. He was carried away from Jerusalem in captivity, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. Nebuchadnezzar. If you don't know about Nebuchadnezzar, read the book of Daniel. There's 4 kings in the book of Daniel. One great, one foolish, one deceived, one wise. King Nebuchadnezzar, King Belteshazzar, King Darius, King Caesar. Okay, who had been carried away from... Okay, I'm just start over. Now, in the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem in captivity, who Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. The king of Babylon. Remember we talked about in verse 1, O daughter of Babylon, Queen Vista, the witch, who sowed discord in God's house, the king's house and stuff. Carried away from the king of Babylon. Verse 7. And he brought up Hades, and he brought up Hades, that is Esther. Her name is Hades, I guess in Hebrew or Greek. I don't know. You have to look that up. God forgive me, I didn't look that part up. But that name means Esther. So Mordecai brought Esther with him, his uncle's daughter. So Mordecai brought Esther, his uncle's daughter, with him. She had neither father nor mother, and was fair and beautiful. She was fair. She was fair to everybody, and she was beautiful. She had no mother, no father. But Mordecai took on her, the one who was Mordecai the Jew, who was took captive by King Nebuchadnezzar to the land of Babylon. He was Esther's uncle, but he became her father because her mother and father passed away. So he took on the father role. Instead of the uncle role, he took on a father's role with Esther. He took Esther on as his own daughter. So it came to pass. Somebody say, it came to pass. It came to pass. That means something that was spoke before is happening right now. When the king's commandment and his decrees was heard. When the king's commandment and decree were heard. Y'all know what his commands and decrees was. It went out to everybody, bring in me some wives so I can pick who I want as my next wife. And then these wives know not to try me because they know what happened to, this witch, that wicked queen. And when many maidens were brought together to the palace, to the custody of Hagar. Hagar was the king's he was the king's chamberlain, one of the king's chamberlains who kept the wife. He kept all the women and got them ready and stuff before they go and present themselves before the king. Esther was brought also unto the king, to the custody of Hagar, the keeper of women. So Esther was brought unto him with the women. Now Esther, remember the book is called Esther, so she is the favored one. This is about her, really. Okay. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification. So she got there, and she obtained favor with the king, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her. So he speedily. Oh, Jesus. Sorry, y'all, but I gotta get off my leg. Yeah. So verse 9, it says, and the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification. With such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meant to be given her out of the king's house. So Esther was given 7 other concubines, wives, to help her get ready for the king. So her 7 wives completed her. The 7 other concubines that was given Esther, 7, remember I told y'all, it's the number of completion in the earth realm. In 6 days God created the earth. In 7 days he sanctified it. The 7th day is the Sabbath, Saturday. So he gave her 7 maidens to go along with Esther. So Esther was the 8th one. Now 8 is the number of new beginnings. So Esther is walking into her new beginning. 8 is the number of new beginnings. She had 7 concubines to help her get ready and dressed and show around the palace and stuff. And she was number 8, the 8th wife. 8 is the number of new beginnings. It shot it. Y'all, let's get ready for a new beginning. To those of us who are obeying, not only waiting on the Lord, but waiting in the Lord. Okay. And he preferred her and her maidens unto the best place of the house of the women. Not only did we know he gave her 7 maidens, but he also preferred her to the best place of the house of the women. He said, give her the best place in the house. Give her the best place in the house. Somebody getting ready to get the best place in the house. I received that for myself. Somebody say, new beginnings. I got the best seat in the house. Yes, God. Verse 10. It says, Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred. Esther had not told none of the people around her who she was, nor had she told her kin people that she had this position coming. She didn't tell them. For Mordecai had charged her that she should not tell them. Mordecai told her, don't tell nobody what's going on with you. Let people think what they want to think. But you walk in your truth. You just be true to who God have called you to be. This is your moment, Esther. Tell no one. See, when your moment comes, people ain't going to be happy for you. The people you think should be happy for you, not going to be happy for you. So you can't expect people to celebrate what God is doing for you. That's why David said, when there is no one there to encourage me, I will encourage myself. Sometimes we have to encourage ourselves. And Esther had to encourage herself in this moment. See, because you don't want to tell people what's happening, what's going on for you too early. Because then they're going to be speaking curses. They're going to say, oh, this ain't going to happen. They're going to start speaking negative things over you so it won't happen. You get it? So Mordecai told her. And Mordecai is really her uncle. But he took the role as a father to her because her real mother and father had passed away. Now remember, the king done called all the women and because they done got rid of the wicked queen, the virgin daughter of Babylon. They done got rid of her. They done exposed her for who she really is. Now the king had his wise men and princes go out and get other women. Now Esther was a part of that bunch. Now as soon as the king seen Esther, he favored her. It says, she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her the things for purification with such thing as belonged to her in the 7 maidens, which were meant to be given her. So he speedily gave her stuff when he seen her. He liked her. Favor ain't fair. When God's favor is on you, can't nobody do nothing about it. Somebody say favor ain't fair. He speedily gave her things, and the maids and gave her maids out of the king's house, and preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of women. So not only did he favor her, not only did he speedily give her things and speedily give her 7 other maids to help her, he also gave them the best place in the palace. Esther had not yet told nobody who she was. She didn't tell nobody she was a Jew. She didn't tell nobody that she served God and all. She didn't tell nobody that. She didn't even tell kin people what she was doing. Because they'll doubt you. Oh, he ain't serving God. They're going to look at the old you. When God say, I'm doing a new thing. So yeah, so verse 10, it says, Esther had not told her people nor her kindred. And you know her people is the king's people, because she came in to apply for the position of a wife, of a concubine to the king. So you know if the king married you, then his people is your people. So Esther had not yet told the people nor her kindred, because Mordecai had told her, had charged her. I charge you. That's why God said today, I charge you today before heaven and earth to choose whom this day you will serve. For no man can serve two masters. He either love the one and hate the other, be loyal to the one and despise the other. Okay, now Mordecai told her, don't tell nobody. And Mordecai, we're on verse 11. And Mordecai walked every day before the courts of the woman's house. Mordecai walked every day before the courts of the house, the women's house. I got to stop right there. Mordecai walked. So a man, he walked. That's somebody who really showing love for her. He walked and checked up on her. He ain't had no car. He ain't had no horse. He ain't had no donkey. He walked and checked up on her to know how Esther did and what should become of her. So he walked and checked on Esther. He was like, how you doing? You all right? Everything all right? Ain't nobody acting funny in there. Ain't nobody throwing discord in there, is it? What's going on? What they said, you going to become the queen? What they saying? He wanted to know. He was curious. You know, he raised her. You know, he took care of her, not as an uncle, but as a father. Who's raising you? Who's raising you? Who is your father? Actions speak louder than words. You can tell me anything. Oh, this my father. This my father. And for those of you who are carnal minded, you're gonna say your natural, your sperm donor for a father. That's how I know you got a hell. You got the father of lies is your mindset. So we know who your father is. But for those of us who are deceived and being deceived, that's already deceived and still being deceived. Who is your father? Your lifestyle shows who is your father. Are you living a lifestyle of lies, or are you living in truth? Are you living a lifestyle of evil, or are you living a lifestyle of good? Are you living lawless, or are you living righteous? Are you living wicked, or are you living holy? Are you being a hypocrite, or are you being disciplined? Are you living lukewarm, or are you all in? Father of lies, father of truth. For light has no fellowship with darkness. Let's go. Where are we? 11. Yeah. Chapter 2, verse 11 of Esther. And Mordecai walked every day before the courts of the woman's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. Verse 12. Now, when every maid's turn was to come to go in to the king. Now, when it was time for every concubine to go in, for the king to choose out of the ones he wanted, or out of the one he wanted, when it was time for them to go in, after she had been 12 months according to the manner of the women. So they did 12 months of purification. They did 12 months, which is a year. They did a year of purification before the king chose his wife. They had to purify themselves. 12 is the number of completion in the spirit realm. 7 is the number of completion in the earth realm. 12 is the number of completion in the spirit realm. They did 12 months of purification before they appeared before, oh my God, before they appeared before the king. This year, some of y'all should be married. The end of this year, kingdom marriages should happen. But you must not only wait on God, but in God. This is the year now. This is the year. They purified 12 months before they appeared before the king. 12 months was their days of purification. 12 is the number of completion in the spirit. They did 6 months with oil of mirth. 6 months they anointed themselves. I anoint my head in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, in the name of the Holy Ghost. 6 months they anointed themselves with oil of mirth, and the other 6 months with sweet odor. So 6 months they anointed themselves with oil of mirth, and the other 6 months they anointed themselves with sweet odor. For the purifying of the women. And it was already provided for them in the kingdom. Verse 13. Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired. Okay, after these 12 months, 6 months of anointing with oil of mirth and sweet, the other 6 months with odor, then they appeared before the king. And whatsoever each one desired was given to her to go with her out of the king's house to meet the king. So whatever she wanted to take with her out of the king's house to go meet him, whether it was she wanted to wear this, whatever she wanted to put on, smell like, take with her, hold in her hand, purse, whatever she wanted to take with her to meet the king, it was provided to her before she left the king's house. Verse 14. In the evening went, and they stayed with the king. They went to see him in the evening and stayed one day with the king. They spent one day with the king. And then returned to a second house. They didn't go back to the house where they came out of. They went to another process. They went up a level. Somebody say, I'm going up. They went up a level. So they came out of one house to meet the king. And when they spent one day with the king, they went into another part of the palace. A second part of the palace. To the custody of another wise man. Remember, it was 7 wise men. So they moved on to another wise man, which kept the concubines. She came unto the kings no more. And then when they went into the second part of the palace, they appeared before the king no more until the king called them by name. Jesus. God getting ready to call somebody by their name. They went into the king. When they went into the second part, they went up and it shot that. Shot did a little shot. Yep. They went up a second level. Somebody coming up in the spirit, somebody moving up in the kingdom. So when they went into the second part of the kingdom, they appeared before the king no more, unless he delighted in her that she were called by her name, unless he called her by her name. The king getting ready to hit Shante, Shandidale shot. The king getting ready to Shante, Shandidale shot. The king getting ready to call some people by y'all name. I can't say y'all. He getting ready to call you by your name. It said when they went into the second part of the kingdom, They came out of one area that they was being housed in, the best place in the kingdom being housed there. Now they moved up in the kingdom after they spent one day with the king. They spent one whole day with the king. Then he moved them to a second part of the palace. And they didn't see the king no more. They appeared before him no more unless he called them by name. Somebody say, God called me by my name. Lord called me by my name. Now when the turn of Esther had come to go into the king, she required nothing. Now when the turn of Esther had come to go appear before the king, she didn't take anything from the place she just left. She said, I'm fine with just being in your presence. I'm fine with just being in the king's presence. It's like she didn't take anything. She required nothing but what Hagar, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. So she didn't require nothing of her own self. She asked one of the king's men. She said, what do you think I should take with me? What do you suggest? And by asking him this, Esther obtained favor in the sight of all the men that looked upon her. Esther obtained favor because she asked, what are you? It's Shanti. I know who you is. It's Shanti. Shanti. And you know who you is. God bless you, woman of God. Get ready. It say, and Esther required nothing. She asked the king's men. She said, what should I take with me? Or should I take anything? Like she asked them. She actually went out her way to ask them when she didn't have to ask them anything. She could have just took all she wanted. But she humbled herself and asked the king's men. She let them know, y'all are important to the king. So if y'all are important to him and y'all been around him this whole time, then y'all know the king. What should I take? What should I wear? That's what she asked the king's men. And by asking them this, she obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. Somebody say Jesus. So Esther was taken unto the king into the royal house in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. This is the 7th year of his reign now. He's been the king 7 years now. 7, remember I told y'all, 7 is the number of completion in the earth realm. In 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth. In 7 days, he rested and sanctified it. So that's telling us right there. Esther was 8. That was her new beginning. She's walking into her new beginnings. 7, the king has been complete. On the day that he meet Esther, it's the 7th year of his reign. He meeting Esther complete. He's found his wife. Pay attention. Now we on verse 17. And the king loved Esther above all the women. Told y'all. 7th year, completion. Esther 8, new beginnings. It's the king completion and Esther new beginnings. Now verse 17 says, and the king loved Esther above all the women. And she, not only did he love her, but he loved her above all the women. Not only do God love somebody and you finna be blessed and you finna move up in the kingdom. God has moved you up in the kingdom, but he loved you above all the women. He looked at you and saw something they didn't have. And she obtained grace and favor in the sight of more than all the virgins. This woman, Esther, obtained grace and favor in the sight, in his sight, more than all the virgins, more than all the women who was there. Esther obtained grace and favor more than all of them. It was something about her that other women didn't have. Somebody say, I got the heart of God. Yes, God. She had it shut it. Shot did a little shot. She had the heart of God. She didn't ask all the women who went before her didn't ask what they didn't ask the chamberlains any questions. They just got what they wanted to get and gone on. She took the time to ask somebody who was close to the king, what should I wear, if anything? So she retained favor in the sight of all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head. He set the royal crown. Somebody say that's favor. As soon as she went in before the king, he set the crown, the royal crown on her head, and made her queen instead of the daughter of Babylon, the old queen, Vista. He replaced Esther. He replaced Vista with Esther. He replaced the witch for the real thing. He replaced the imposter, he shunted, for the real queen. And right when he saw her, he knew she was different. He knew when he saw her over everybody he looked on, over all the virgins he looked on, he saw her and knew she was different. There was something about her that stood out from all the other virgins. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes. We're on verse 18. And his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release. And he made a release to the province and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Verse 19. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat at the gates. Verse 19. This is what we take off now. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat at the king's gates. Now Mordecai, y'all remember who Mordecai is now. Mordecai is the one who was born a Jew. He took Esther as his daughter when he really her uncle, but he took on as a father to her because her mother and father passed away. So he took on the father role to her, and then the king sent out commandments looking for concubines, so he let her go into the palace to see if the king would pick her. And while she was in the palace, before he allowed her go in, he told her, tell nobody. Don't tell your kin people, and don't tell the people in the palace who you is. Don't tell them who you is. I charge you, don't tell them who you is. And then while she obeyed him, and while she was in there, he used to walk every day and check on her to see how she was doing, and is she succeeding, is she moving up. He was checking on her to see was she moving up. Esther chapter 2 verse 19. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, Mordecai sat at the king's gates. Esther had not yet told her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her for Esther, as Mordecai had charged Esther to not tell anyone. Okay, verse 21. Now this way it gets good. In the days, now this Mordecai who told Esther, don't tell nobody who I am. Don't tell nobody kin to me. I'm going to come by, I'm going to check on you and see how things going. I'm going to check on you personally, and I'm going to check on you how the things going for you as being his wife, his concubine, where you at in there. Now in those days, while Mordecai sat at the king's gates, so God got people in the kingdom, and he got people sitting at the gates. Now the king got people in the kingdom, and he got people sitting at the gates. Now remember, God is King of Kings. So God is the true king. And then God is the kings with a capital K. We are the kings, lowercase k. Now in those days, while Mordecai sat at the king's gates, two of the king's chamberlains, two of the people who worked for the king, who was close to the king. Remember, you had the king, you had his wise men, the chamberlains, then you had the princes, the 7 princes. You had the 7 wise men, the chamberlains, then you had the 7 princes. Two of the chamberlains, and then it give their name. Two of the king's chamberlains, y'all got to look at their names. One is his name is 2 words, and one his name is. Now y'all remember the 2 people I called out in this video. This way, yes God. This why I get okay. Yes God. Let's make it make sense. Remember I called out Brother Millage, and I called out Tate Hardy. I called out Brother Millage, and I called out Tate Hardy. They sit in the church up under the king. They sitting in the church up under the king. They supposed to be the king's chamberlains, his wise men. They portray as they're for the king. It says, in those days while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the chamberlains, then their name is Big Thin. These 2 words, his name is 2 words now. Big Thin, Brother Millage, and Trish. The other one name is Trish, Tate Hardy. Of those which kept the door. Wasn't y'all at the door when I seen y'all? Y'all was standing at the door. It says, now in those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, 2 of the king's chamberlains, Brother Millage and Tate, of those which kept the door, were angry and sought to lay hands on the king. They were angry and sought to lay hands on the king. See, it be the people closest to you. See, they befriend you to betray you. Matter of fact, yes, God. Matter of fact, that was my word. That was God's word for Tate and Brother Millage. Then, God said y'all are false witnesses. Y'all betray people. Y'all befriend people to betray them. That's what's going on right here in this verse. Where they sought to lay hands on the king. Now they doing this secretly. Don't nobody know they got this plan but them two. Them two talk about it with each other. And the king was known. And the thing was known to Mordecai. Now remember, Mordecai was the one sit outside the gates. He sat outside the gates. See, they sitting close to the king, and the king don't know what's even about to go on, what they planning against him. But Mordecai, who sit outside the gates, this was made known to him. It said, and the thing was known to Mordecai. What thing? That they had sought to lay hands on the king. And the thing was made known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther, the queen. And Mordecai told it to Esther, the queen. Mordecai said, these 2 men who keeping the gate, who standing at the gate, who work for the king, his chamberlains, who so close to him, they planning on killing him. They planning on killing his future, killing his destiny. They plan on setting him up for failure now. Catch this in the spirit now. They planning on setting him up. Yeah, they portraying to be saved. They portraying to serve him. But it's all for a purpose. They're digging a ditch for him and laying snares for his feet. But he don't see. But Mordecai, who sat on the outside, seen. So he made this known to Esther. And Esther notified the king that Mordecai told her this. Esther went to the king and said, Now, King, I have someone close to me at the gate. He comes by here every day and checks on me and to see if you chose me to be your wife. He sits at the gate with two of your servants, supposed to be servants, stand at the gate for you. He have overheard them saying that they plan on to take you out. They plan to lay hands on you. So the king, verse 23. So when the king heard this, when he heard this matter, he questioned him. So he said, okay, let me see if this is true. He said, okay, he believed her. But he didn't just believe her. He investigated the matter. He said, okay, well, let me see of this matter. Let me find out of this matter. He said, when inquisition was made of the matter, when he questioned the matter, when he investigated the matter, it was found out. It was found out. Therefore, they were both hanged on a tree. It was found out, and they were both hanged on a tree. So what was found out? That what she's saying was true. That what she told him, Mordecai told her, he found out it was true. And he hung them on a tree. How many of y'all hanging under a tree right now? He hung them on a tree. How many of y'all are hanging under a tree right now? Catch this in the spirit. Y'all drinking, smoking, gossiping. Y'all ain't talking about the gospel. Y'all gossiping. How many of y'all still hanging under a tree right now? Cursed is a man who hang on a tree. And to hang on a tree is to hang under a tree. Cursed is the man who hangs on a tree. I'm sorry, y'all. A bee just flew in here. A bumblebee. Yeah, cursed is the man who hang on a tree. It says, and he hung them on a tree. How many of y'all hanging under a tree right now? Smoking, drinking, gossiping, having sex with the people. Half y'all done had sex with the people you're hanging under the tree with. Just sitting under there popping beer after beer, liquor after liquor, smoking crack after crack, and gossiping about people. I done did crack. I done did every drug out there, Molly. I done did it all. So you can't say that when God deliver you from this, you gonna quit. No. You don't want to be delivered. Because you can be delivered right now, this very second. You can be delivered. If I can stop being a homosexual, if I can get off crack, if I can stop drinking, if I can stop smoking, if I can stop gossiping, if I can stop hanging around and twerking to the devil's music and playing the devil's music, so can you. But y'all hanging under that tree. Cursed is a man who hangs on a tree. To hang on a tree is to hang under a tree. And it was written in the book of Chronicles before the king. The king said, this man has saved my life. So not only have 3 snakes got out this kingdom, been exposed, but I have gained a wife. I have gained a loyal servant, a soldier to stand at the gate for me. And I have gained their people, all of their people, all the Jews. So I have gained more than I have lost. And my loss is not really a loss. It would have been a loss if I stayed lost in it. If I died in it, it would have been a loss. But godliness is gain. So we got 3 snakes put out the kingdom. 3 snakes. You got the Queen Vista, who sold discord, who was a witch in the kingdom. Then you got two men who sat close to the king, who worked for the king, who was on prayer lines praying for people, who deceived the king. Remember, I told y'all 4 kings. And King Darius was the 3rd king, and he was deceived by the people close to him. Are you King Darius? King Darius was deceived by his chamberlains. He was tricked to throw Daniel in the lion's den. They came up with a law to throw him in the lion's den. And the king could not go against his own law that he had made. So he had to throw Daniel in the lion's den. He was deceived by the people closest to him. 2 men is close to you. Pastor. 2 men is Shanti. 2 men is close to you. And they planning to kill your future. They speaking discord in your ear. Will you be a King Darius today? Or will you be vigilant and hear what thus says the Lord? Lord, I pray to God this go to who it's supposed to go to. And Mordecai, who sat on the outside. Somebody wasn't even close to the king. But his niece was. His daughter was. His niece, who he took on as a daughter, sat close to you. King. And she delivered the message. The message is delivered today. Mordecai saved the king's life because he sat outside the gate and he paid attention. He was vigilant to what the Lord was doing in his life, showing him in his life, telling him. So he was in the right place at the right time, and he was able to deliver the message, get the message to the king. That 2 of his chamberlain, 2 of the people closest to him, was planning on killing him. Killing his dream. Killing what God had for him. See, they see what God about to do for you, but you don't see. It ain't for you to know what God finna do and when he gonna do it. Just know that he's gonna do it. He done made you some promises, Pastor. Who is your chamberlain? Sowing discord. And find out who is your Mordecai, who can save your life. Maybe in the spirit and in the flesh. They may not be only saving your spiritual life, but they may be saving your earthly life, your life in the flesh. Or it could be both. Mordecai delivered the message to the king and told him, 2 men, 2 of your chamberlain, 2 of the men right up under you, they closest to you, planning on laying hands on you. And he got that message, and he sought the Lord, and he found out that Mordecai was telling the truth. And he honored Mordecai. He had that story written in the book of Chronicles before the king. He had his men write down a book of Chronicles about that. What are you writing down? God bless. Amen.